Good evening, and welcome to another episode of The Fire Caves, a Star Trek Deep Space Nine podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Perry.
And I'm your host, David. Tonight we're going to be talking about seasons 3 and 4 as a kind of overall recap, talking about the highlights and kind of lowlights of those two seasons. But before we continue, you can find us on Facebook, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube as The Fire Caves, a Star Trek Deep Space Nine podcast.
That is correct. And as I say every single week, you should find us and follow us because we're great. We're awesome. We're a good time. And we are wrapping up a lot of our DS9 focused content. I'm sure that we'll return to it at some point, but we're going to move on to some other things. So stick with us as we get through this and on to those other projects. Speaking of other projects, this is one that is unrelated to anything that we do on our show, but something I just found out about, which I don't know if I'm excited about or just kind of feeling smug about, and that is that The Witcher is is being canceled, effectively over. As we know, or as if some of you were fans of it, you know that Henry Cavill played the main character for I think 2 seasons. Then he was basically fired, and they brought in Liam Hemsworth to
Yeah.
replace him. And from what we're being told, or from what I've just recently found out, that even though he has filmed at least one complete season as the Witcher, they have now effectively not asked Liam to return and decided to move in another direction entirely with the show, due in no small part to the overwhelmingly negative reviews that he's received and that the show has received in general since the parting of ways with
Yeah.
Henry Cavill. So all that like just happened. So there you
So
go.
you're saying I understood that they had already had agreements with Netflix to finish season 5 was going to be their final season. You're saying that they've gone ahead and preemptively said, "Nope, 4 done."
As far as what I'm being told, yes, that it just even before the episodes have been released, apparently it's been met with such overwhelmingly negative, feedback and everything else, and they're just decided they're not even going to do that. They're just going to end it and move on.
Yeah.
Eat the cost. And again, like I said, I'm feeling incredibly smug about this. I know that the show had no end of issues. I know with Henry Cavill, the main issue was that, at least from what I was able to find out, that he was a avid fan of the original source
Books. Yeah.
material, the books, and he wanted to play the character and have the show in general, not just his character, but the show in general. He wanted it to very much follow along with the lore, but there were massive departures, which left him really upset. And then he began to fight back on some of those changes and was trying to get them to stay lore accurate, which is why they ended up firing him, and then they put in Liam, hoping that Liam would be more amenable to their changes. And unfortunately, all the changes they've made have, left fans uh, vacating the whole
Yeah.
franchise. So
Well,
lots
I
lost.
watched the first 2 seasons. I remember liking the first one fine. It had a weird timey-wimey sort of where are we in time thing going on,
Mm.
and then the last episode revealed that basically everything we've been watching about the Witcher himself was prequel stuff to everything else we were watching. The final episode matched up with the beginning of series plot in the episode 1. Um, which is an interesting kind of way to get people to like what's going on. But then season 2, and apparently every other season afterward, turned into where's Siri? We gotta find Siri. Siri, Siri. Anyone seen Siri? Where's Siri? So it like turned into she's the MacGuffin they always have to go find. She's also a super badass, even though she's a tiny little 5'2"
Oh, the
girl,
classic. There's a term for that.
Mary
Um,
Sue.
no, well, yeah, but I mean the badass part, like where she knows super martial arts and can drop kick a 500-pound man across the room.
Yeah.
Um, I remember they used it a lot for Summer Glau when she was doing the Terminator series and so forth.
Well, while you're thinking
I'll remember it in a minute.
Yeah,
Yeah, but
while you're
yeah.
thinking about it, the things I've been watching online, because I didn't watch season 3. because at that point I was agreeing it had lost whatever magic it had. Like Liam Hemsworth trying to take over for Cavill was. I mean, I haven't watched the season, and I've only seen trailers. You can't do it. I mean, Henry Cavill was the character. His that first episode is when he says F word. He goes and and it's the best it's the best F bomb ever dropped in all of because it's not a like F you. It's just like giving into like, all right, I hate this, but I'm gonna do what I gotta do. Anyway, Henry Cavill was The Witcher. He loved the books. He loved the shows. He's actually a super nerd. He likes, like, for example, Warhammer 40,000, and he's every guy's guy. He's a buff dude. He's played Superman. He's also down to earth, friendly. He loves dirty stuff. Like anyone can get along with him. And not only did the female like producer of the show like toss him aside. But apparently they like insulted the author. They wouldn't take his suggestions. They actually said they disliked the source material. They ignored
That's more of what I had been hearing too. I'll admit I never read any of those books. I don't know
I
anything
haven't
about
either myself.
the books
Right.
either. But one of the things that attracted me to watching the show was initially it was billed as they were going to be lore accurate. They
Right.
were following this source material. It's kind of the same thing about Game of Thrones. That's why I
Yes.
was ever interested in watching that was how closely they were working with the author
Yep.
and the original writings to do this show. And when they started to depart from that is when Game of Thrones started having issues. And so, when I was hearing all the same thing about The Witcher, I was kind of like, oh man,
Yeah.
we're getting ready to have another, Game of Thrones incident. And we did. And that's a lot of what I heard was that some of the writers, directors were wanting to do their own thing. They had their own ideas. They wanted to move away from this source material and do this, whole other kind of show. And again, avid fans and people like Cavill were like, no, like
Yeah.
you're basing this off of this thing. Keep it this thing. It's actually the same thing that plagued the Halo show as well. They, were supposed they build it as lore accurate. It was supposed to be off of, the games and the books and so forth. And then they did something that was totally different. And now, as a person who did play those games and read those books, I'll tell you right now, from episode one, they were way off. Like, I don't even think I didn't finish it. I didn't even finish the first season. It
Right.
was so bad.
I remember you
So,
hating it. Yeah, I remember
yeah,
you being absolutely hating of it.
and then,
Yeah.
that show, I remember when they tried to rebrand in season 2 and be like, "Oh no, we're returning to source material." I did not watch it, and from the people that I know that did, they said that was a lie. They did not return to source material. So, all this proves from Halo to Witcher to Game of Thrones is if you say you're basing something off of the lore of any beloved franchise, you'd best stick to it
Yeah.
because you will suffer in the long run. If you've got your own ideas and your stuff is inspired by an original work like Witcher, Game of Thrones, Halo, whatever, then say that and
Yeah.
do your own thing. I will not knock your original work that was inspired by whatever, but don't try to sell me on your lore accurate and then you're giving me whole new stories based off of nonsense that in no way has anything to do with the source material.
You know what's great about what you just said? George R. R. Martin, who did Game of Thrones, at least the books, he said that he was writing his books as an answer to J.R.R. Tolkien. He was saying that he thought Tolkien, while he loved Tolkien, he thought Tolkien's kind of binary good versus evil was not realistic. He wanted a grayer storyline with more complex characters, and therefore Game of Thrones. So, yes, totally like tell who your inspiration is. I love this author, I love their work, but I wanted to do a play on, I wanted to change it up. I want to do something different. And as long as it's not a straight up rip off, of course, fantasy is a genre, so do fantasy. And speaking of Tolkien, when they made the movies, Jackson, Peter Jackson,
Peter Jackson.
he's on record like during the the special features or one of the interviews he did, he said we didn't want to put anything of ourselves in the movie. We wanted to represent the movies like and make sure they would have been happy with it. And they made changes. Don't get me wrong. Like Aragorn is actually. It's been a while since I've read the books, but he actually does have a number of changes to his character from the books. But it still makes for a coherent storyline. And they didn't just straight up just toss out the original and then move in their own direction. If they made changes, it was only to make sure it fit into a movie style plot. Aragorn's plot line is a little bit more meh in the sense that it's not as he doesn't go on a character journey like he does in the movies. They gave him more stuff to do, if I remember correctly, just to make his because you were being introduced into the world in the movies, and they got to catch you up. They don't, if you read a book, sometimes you're a little more willing to be a little bit slower with pacing because you're reading at your own pace. But with the movie, they got to go. So yeah. Anyway, yeah, totally. You gotta respect. I mean, the fact that Henry Cavill was out there being like, "I'm a huge fan. I want to play this character. I'm here for it." And then to hear him slowly, like you would hear him in interviews, and like one of the last interviews he did, he was like, "Yeah, my job is to play the character like the way I think he should be, but to make sure it fits in with the vision provided by the showrunners." And you could tell he was just like, "Yeah, I'm kind of
Yeah,
done."
exactly,
I'm putting a
exactly.
positive spin on this because I'm a professional. I'm not
Yeah.
going to chew out people I'm unhappy with. But
Well, and I remember they distinctly did try to make it seem like that's what this was really becoming. It wasn't a person who was dedicated to lore that was objecting. They almost tried to make it like a sexist thing. He's a man who doesn't want to take orders and direction from a woman
right,
showrunner, producer, whatever. And it's like, no, he doesn't like that you're changing the source material while trying to say that you're still lore accurate. Like you're lying to people with the product that you're producing,
yeah,
and that's why he's upset.
right,
You know, so I also to bring this home to Star Trek, I feel that way about the J.J. Abrams films. I don't like them at all in the sense that they are you're using our classic original series characters here, and you've completely turned everything about them on their ear for no reason. You've taken away the things that elevated the characters into near legendary status, and some of the more humane aspects of them you completely stripped away in order to give us these very dry, mundane, just boring kinds of characters.
and it's all
And
action packed. It's
yeah,
not
it's all action. There's like Star Trek has always been, more about the thought provoking thriller with action as well.
right.
You took out all the thought provoking stuff and gave us lens flares and your pew pew weapons and whatever else. That's not Star Trek. So yeah, like it was great to see a Star Trek movie on the big screen for the first time in a long time. But then, once you sit and actually watch the movies, they're not great movies. And then when you find out that he was never a fan of Star Trek and that he really was just kind of using Star Trek as the vehicle to get to what he really wanted to direct, it just
Star Wars, yeah.
all the more made it was just like you never should have done
And then he
those
messed up
movies in that
Star
first.
Wars too.
Yeah, so it's just like,
Yeah.
yeah, I never appreciated them, and I just really, after all that, didn't appreciate any of it. So
Yeah. Yeah, the funny thing about J.J. Abrams, real quickly, everyone makes fun of him now because he has this idea that storytelling has a mystery box. Start with a mystery box, and that's how you get people caught up in the story. And then he doesn't pay that off. J.J. Abrams doesn't know how to pay off his mystery boxes, and so he's notorious for passing off, like, well, Lost, he passed it off. Star Trek, he passed it off. Well, Star Wars is the real thing I'm talking about. He passed off Star Wars, and they begged him to come back for the third one because the second one was so bad. Um, yeah, he's not dead. He hasn't done a lot of movies lately. I don't know if you've noticed, but his career
I
has gone.
no, I've certainly noticed. I have not seen the J.J. Abrams. Now, honestly, I have not been looking for them
Yeah,
because again, it's just like, and I mean, he used to the gimmicky lens flares and everything. That was the thing that used to crack me up so much. I mean, it was a joke for everything, you know. How do you know it's a J.J. Abrams film? You can't see half of it. That's how you know.
The sun
You
is
know.
blinding you through the camera.
Yeah. So yes, I'm glad that he has, not had any kind of return to anything. We don't need it. We really don't. But we're not here to talk about all that. We're here to talk about Star Trek Deep Space Nine. We are on season 3, um, which is a great season to start on because we have once again um, a two-parter that is going to kick it off for us with. Um, hold on, I'm sorry. In our
Yeah, it's a
chat, I just
two-parter.
saw that he said I like Beyond. It wasn't awful. Yes, it was, and we'll have to talk about that later. It was terrible, but we'll we'll get there. Okay. Anyway, yes, two-parter: The Search, and which is 1 and 2, which is where we see the return of the Galaxy class for us with the Odyssey, as it was called, and it gets blown up by the Jem'Hadar in their suicide run. Great way to open a season, by the way, with a beloved uh, ship model basically getting destroyed. I
Well, that
keep
was
wanting to call it the Enterprise, but it
wasn't that
wasn't the
technically the
Enterprise.
end of the last one, or did they re-show that scene? Are you saying they re-showed
They,
that scene?
yeah, the search is a part of season 3. It's a two-parter, episode
Right,
1 and 2 of season 3. At the end of
season
episode
two.
1, no, at the end of the episode 3 in season at the end of episode 1 in season 3, the Odyssey is destroyed.
Galaxy. No, I think it was destroyed at the end of the last episode. The Jem'Hadar. That's how they get rescued. That's how they rescue. Uh,
Oh, the
um,
Jem'Hadar.
they rescue Cisco and Quark
Jake
and
and
Jake and
Jake.
Quark and Nog. They're all on that planet having the
Oh, you're
picnic
right.
when they get
Yes, you're right. It
and
was
they
the
and they
Jem'Hadar. That's where it gets blown up. You are correct.
right. Yeah, it's the
And so
last thing that
then,
happens in season two. And
oh,
they're
the season 3. That's when we get the Defiant.
exactly. I was gonna say,
Yes, the Defiant shows
yeah.
up in
Turns
season
out
3.
that during the season two, season three break, Cisco was somewhere off. We're not sure where, and he shows back up with bada bing, bada boom. The
So this is where we learn a little bit of Cisco's background because, as we know, before he was assigned to Deep Space Nine, he had been working at the Utopia Planitia shipyards, and Cisco had been one of the people designing the Defiant, as a matter of fact. And so, basically, after the Jem'Hadar incident, he went home to get a little toy he'd been working on and bring it out. So that's where we get the Defiant for the first time with its Romulan cloaking device, and
Yes.
they are on a mission to find the Dominion and the Jem'Hadar from where they came from.
Right.
And they take the vessel into the Gamma Quadrant. They're captured, but along the way, we also see that Odo is reunited with his people. We
Hmm.
finally get some background on our mysterious constable, get some more information about him, and we find out that his people that he's been long searching for are the leaders of the Dominion. They are the founders.
Hmm.
So a lot of great information kind of dumped on us here after our hiatus between seasons 2 and season 3. Great episode opener. I think that Deep Space Nine is one of few shows that I feel like did both season openers and season endings. They did them well. They gave us a lot to think about before the season would when the season ended, and then a lot to work with when it came back. Every season is like that a little bit. If you think about it, all of their seasons, they do it very well to leave you with a lot.
Hmm.
Um, Another episode in season 3 that I think that we should definitely talk about is the episode Second Skin. That's where Kira is kidnapped and they try to make her believe that she is a Cardassian sleeper agent,
Uh,
and this is where she meets Leggett. What was his name? I want to
um,
say. is that Kenny Gamora is the one that is her?
Yeah, the one that she treats as a father figure in that later episode
Yes,
when he dies. Yeah,
yes,
Second
and
Skin
yeah,
and uh, yeah, Kenny Gamora. Yep, that's right.
yep.
Yep,
And so they're trying to convince her and us that she is really his long lost sleeper cell daughter, Ileana. She fights against it quite successfully, but he just can't take the thought that she may be whisked away and uh, tortured. And so he helps her escape by revealing that he is a member of this Cardassian underground movement.
right.
Um,
Which we briefly got an insight into in the second season
mhm.
with that one woman and her students that Quark had once upon a time a
Fatima,
relationship with.
Dr.
Yeah,
Fatima Lang. She was the
right,
Cardassian teacher that Quark had been in love with. And so now
right,
we see some more of that information here with Tekeni. And it turns out it's all an elaborate ruse to get him to reveal himself. And
right,
the Obsidian Order is trying to get him. So,
right. Which I have to say, like, I feel like that plot was way too convoluted in that sense. But I get that you could only get like if this plot of trying to reveal Gamora was something that we needed to see. The only way for us to see that plot happen is if one of our characters was there to participate in it somehow. And so the idea that yes, actually, Cardassians did once upon a time send his daughter off to be a undercover agent, maybe that was legitimate, and this whole plot with Kira is it's elaborate, it's a little bit much, but maybe
it's
it makes sense in the Star Trek universe in some really weird off the wall kind of way.
well, it's one of those that, if I remember correctly, when we were talking about this episode on our show, we said that this would have been one that would have served as a two-parter as well. Deep Space Nine had a lot of very complex episodes that they were trying to, squeeze into that 45-minute box.
Yeah. Yep.
So many of them would have worked as two-parters, or even, this would have been something that I could see them doing like as a and B plot of a whole season. Kira disappears, and while our A plot is our heroic crew trying to track her down, our B plot is watching her try to figure this situation out on whether or not who she really is, and resisting and so forth. I would have liked to see that, but obviously they didn't do shows like that back then. It'd be great if someone did something like that now, but it would also suck if they did it now because all the shows are only like 10 episodes apiece. So to really kind of sit in that world and enjoy it, it would take multiple seasons to do right, to do real
Right.
justice.
Right.
Um, what's another great episode? We get I'm just looking through the episode list here. We get the Defiant episode and the return of Thomas Riker,
Yeah.
Will Riker's transporter clone.
Yep.
And we also have an episode where Luoxana Troy shows up, and we see emotions run amok because she's going through some kind of weird uh, change or whatever it is, and
Right.
her emotions are being foisted upon the rest of our crew members. We see Jadzia is obsessed with Cisco. We watch as Kira and the Doctor make out with each other. Jake wants to have Kira marry him. All kinds of stuff in this little wonky bottle episode, um, as well. So again, I feel like it's one that needs to have an honorable mention because again, it is Loxana Troy, who has become more dear to me as I've gotten older and have rewatched certain scenes with her in
Yep.
them. I enjoyed the way that she's just all about living life to its fullest and the absurdity of things, and how drab and serious everyone is, and she's just very lively. So I've liked that.
Yeah. Going back real quickly to earlier episodes in the season, the House of Quark episode was funny because it introduces the idea that Quark, by pretending to have killed a certain Klingon, he has to marry a Klingon. That creates a funny little bit, but that also is what's going to lead into the season. Is it season 4 where, or season
I
5, I
think it's
guess, where
season 5
Jadzia
with Worf and
and
Jadzia.
yeah, finally get together. But that's because Worf is initially attracted to Quark's supposed widow Grilka
Hmm.
in that later season, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
And then Equilibrium, which was episode 4 of this season, is where we learned that Dax um, had she had some problems with whatever.
Yeah.
She realizes that she has a previous host that was being suppressed or something.
Yes.
Yeah,
Duran, the
yeah,
murderer.
yeah,
So interesting. That was a pretty cool episode. Kind of dark. They could have gone darker, but it's okay.
yeah.
Um, we also in this season got another two-parter episode, Past Tense,
Hmm.
where our crew goes back in time and deals with the United States in a very tumultuous time, which we watched the episode and found out it's like 2 years from now or something like
No,
that.
no, it's 2024. We were watching it when we watched it, it was 2 years away or something. We
Yeah,
were not
that's
that far
right.
away. But at this point, you and me talking now, it was a year ago in the timeline of Deep
I
Space
mean,
Nine.
and depending on who you talk to, it's happened. Establishment of sanctuary cities and so forth. It's happened.
Yeah, yeah.
So we got military like police and whatever else running amok in various cities and stuff right now. So we're there, baby. We're
Yeah,
there. You know. Um, we also have in this season the episode Life Support, which is where Barial finally we are free of Barial.
yep, yeah. Interesting idea that Bashir, as a doctor, has some sort of technology that can, basically force. What is it? Like he has it's a computer like
He
thing that can.
replaces part of Barial's brain with an artificial positronic brain, which
Right,
is the first time we hear that they can do that to humans. And
right,
if you remember anything from Star Trek in general, you will know that the positronic brain is what Lieutenant Commander Data has, only he has a
right,
whole one, not a
right,
piece of one,
right,
obviously. So now, even though this is successful for Barial initially, it's not a long-term solution.
right,
Barial is going to die.
right,
Like that is something that has come up a couple of times when people have discussed this episode because we're made to a certain degree, like, and I get it, we're kind of made to think that because of the way that he's being pushed, because Bashir keeps having to replace more and more of Barial's brain with this artificial one.
right,
And so it's like at some point we're going to lose Barial, what makes Barial Barial, because it'll be replaced with this positronic whatever, and then we'll have a robot inside his flesh.
right,
But it's also important to note that it's not just a brain malfunction that he's suffering from that's killing him. He's also got extensive organ damage. The reason that the positronic brain is successful is because it's overriding his ability to feel the pain in his body. So he's still
right,
going to die. So just remember that when you watch that episode, he's not just going to become, a synthoid or you know, robot man or whatever it is. He's going to die.
right,
So Um, it's also interesting to note about that episode and that particular technology that they use. It comes up several times in other Trek later on, and it's the only time that I can think of where we see a building on the technology. So if you go back, or on this point, yeah, go back and watch Discovery and Picard, and you will hear about an outgrowth of the technology, which in Picard it's the technology that could have saved a certain family's son, but
right,
didn't because of a ban on the technology. It's also the technology that later leads to the savior of it saves the life of another legendary character. Having to speak in code, by the way, because David hasn't watched these things. I don't want to spoil them for him. So it saves the life of another legendary character. It also allows another different legendary character to achieve a whole new lease on life. And in
Picard,
huh?
huh? Picard, what?
No, I didn't say that. Anyway, in uh in Discovery, it allows for a new character to have a new life at one point as well. So, and it's all related to the development of positronic technology. So, and they talk about it. They make direct references to it with Barial and some of the other characters as well. So, it's very interesting that they were able to like tie that string and thread that through all those shows. But if you don't know what to listen for, you miss it. So
Right.
be an uber nerd like me, and then you'll know these things, and you can watch the episode and be like, "Hey, haha, that's the thing. They're doing the thing."
Right.
Um. Anyway, season 3 also brings us Enabran Tain, who is
hmm
Garrick's father.
Yep. Yep.
Um, Wonderful introduction of a new character. Enabran Tain, our spy master, who taught Garrick everything he knows. And we learn more about the Obsidian Order and the partnership with the Tal Shiar. And then we watch them all fall out and get wiped out by the Dominion. So I think that's always a highlight because one, I like saying Obsidian Order. It's a great name. I want to have a building and name it Obsidian or something like that. It's such
hmm
a great little thing to have. We also have a mirror episode where
Mm.
Jennifer comes to our station trying to convince Ben to, help out the Terrans in her world. It's also a great way to give Ben the closure that he needs in order to move on. As I said then when we reviewed this episode, this was kind of setting the stage for Ben to start dating. We
Yeah.
didn't get to see him really have um obviously he was traumatized with his wife's death, and this episode gave us his ability to say goodbye to her.
Right.
So that was great.
Yeah. Um, the episode Heart of Stone is a little bit important to talk about because
Oh
that's the
yeah.
one where Odo meets the female changeling for the first time, I believe. Is it
Yes.
accurate?
She no, it's not the first time. He met her in the search.
Okay, I was
But
gonna say it's either that or this one. Yeah,
yes.
but
And
she
so
tries to bring him back to her people and pretends to be Kira. And when he professes his love for her, she says the same. And he's like, "Wait a minute, you're not Kira. Kira
right.
doesn't love me. I know that."
Because it's important to note that in the episode The Search Part 2, they offered Odo the ability to stay with them, which he turned it down. In Heart of Stone, when they get to that point where Kira professes her seeming love for Odo, and and he reveals that you're not Kira. She wouldn't say that, whatever else. The female changeling says when she reveals herself, "We were puzzled when you didn't accept our invitation to join us."
Right,
And I suspected it had something to do with Kira.
right,
That's why we replaced her so we could figure out what your deal is.
right.
Now we know. Now
Yeah,
we know.
right.
So that was what that was. And again, very interesting. Um, that was a great one, to watch Odo put the pieces together and how much his infatuation with Kira really blinded him because it took him a while to get there to the realization that Kira wasn't Kira, you know? And that's also the episode. Yeah, it's also where we see that Nog is asking Cisco for a recommendation to Starfleet Academy,
With
and
the
Cisco is flat out
prerequisite
refusing.
bribe that
Yes,
Ferengis always give.
yes, and Cisco refusing until finally he gets Nog to break down and give him
His
the
true
real
reason.
reason, and
Yeah,
it's a fantastic scene.
yeah.
Aaron Eisenberg delivers spectacularly here
Yeah,
in
this
this
is the
one.
moment where Nog really begins to shine. Up till this point, he's been um, Jake's kind of ne'er do well friend, his little sneaky buddy, his Ferengi buddy with all the Ferengi ways of doing things. We've already seen some of that, and in, like, I think season 2, there was a bit of
Mhm.
Ferengi exchanging this for that at one point. I forget how that works, but excuse me. Yeah, Nog's from here on out. Nog's storyline is one of the best.
Yeah, greatest character arc in the franchise,
Yeah,
without a
without a
doubt.
doubt. Yeah,
I mean, he goes from in about to be a criminal, lifelong criminal, to Starfleet officer. So
yeah.
yeah,
And
great story arc.
I'll say it now. I hate to have to say it, but I feel like Jake at this point, his plot line starts to flounder. He's not joining Starfleet, which is where all the action takes place, and so they want to make him an author and someone who likes to write. And I, I'm not going to say that that's a bad idea. It just at times I didn't feel like Sirach Lofton was given the best chance to make that feel realistic because he's always writing on the pad, and I
Hmm.
feel like he's too kind of casual about it as a character. Like they never gave him kind of a like I felt like it was the character didn't have a drive to do it as much as like he didn't have anything else to do, if that makes sense. Like he was kind of
Yeah,
adrift.
like I will agree with that. They didn't make it seem like it was something that was um like a part of
Did
his
I say
core
Rom at some point? I
being.
meant to say Nog.
Maybe. Um,
I might have said Rom at some
Yeah,
point. Anyway, keep
yeah,
going.
I understand. Yeah, but yeah, they didn't make it feel like the writing thing was really a part of his like his core. Like it
Hmm.
wasn't the driving force for him. It seemed almost like the driving force was I don't want to do what my dad does, and
Yes.
they didn't have another way of expressing that because.
Right.
Like you said, Starfleet is where the action is, and we kind of already know what that path is
Right.
for a character. But I think it would have been interesting for them to still give us that, but change it to where he's not on the command track. He doesn't want to be a commanding officer. He
Well, that's
wants to
why
be
Nog
something
works.
else.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right. He wants to be something else, and watching kind of that father son dynamic would have been interesting.
Right.
But this is the problem I always have when they feature a lot of kids. They don't they just don't handle kids well.
They have a real hard time
Yeah,
with it. Yeah.
Wesley was this wonderkind who he was an insufferable know-it-all. Like they didn't endear him they didn't endear Wesley to kids of his generation,
Yeah.
which is a problem when you're trying to make a role model for kids to look up to.
Right.
And I feel like they missed that beat with Jake as well. For a lot of kids who don't I can have a way to figure out their direction and are trying to understand what they need to do for that next step in life. They could have used Jake as a role model in that sense on how to figure things out and how to ask for and take advice.
Right.
But they didn't do that at all. He just kind of casts around a bit, and anybody that does try to give him advice, he immediately kind of bucks up against. And I didn't like that portrayal of him. And then this later, where he's supposed to be so introspective and moody, and his father's gone. Yeah, I wasn't really into that either.
Well, what's interesting is it's around this time that Jake, I think it's which episode is it? I'll keep talking. I'll try and find it. But Jake is in the middle of like being the guy who's willing to go out and date. He dates a girl, one of the Dabo girls, and initially, his father is like, I don't like that, but then like he kind of likes the girl after a bit, and then that didn't work out. So like Jake is initially turning into a young man. He's going out, he's dating.
Hmm.
If he had been allowed to have a plot where, let's say he, I don't know, gets married, like he has a kid, it
Yeah,
would have
if
been
they had used Jake as a way to look at civilian life
yes,
inside the Federation,
exactly.
that could have been a great thing as
Well,
well.
and I was gonna say because I said it last time, they never did a great job of giving us a lot of consistent Bajoran characters outside of Kira. Give him a Bajoran girlfriend and fiance and wife. Like maybe he
Yeah,
doesn't
and
marry
then
her right away.
let us see him like moving off of the station and moving to Bajor
Yes,
proper. And now we
right,
have to go to Bajor to visit Jake and his girlfriend, and he's running a shop on Bajor,
right.
or something like that. Not and why is it? I don't
And make him
understand
a
this.
Cajun chef. Actually,
Yeah, I
make
was gonna say why is it that it's like Cisco wanted to move and build a house and be a farmer? Why do you want to be a farmer?
yeah.
Like I don't understand that appeal at all. Like to a certain like I guess to a certain degree I get it. You've lived this kind of very hectic and demanding and make all the decisions lifestyle. You want to do something else that's maybe a little less, that.
Right,
But why is it always farmer? Why can't you, oh, I'm gonna go and open up a bistro somewhere, or
right.
I'm going to go into um I don't know, business marketing for this what like anything else.
Yeah.
Stop with making everybody go from I was the impressive leader of the whole entire sector and I'm going to give it all up
So
to be a
go farm.
farmer.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
going to farm apples
yeah.
on this remote
Picard's a
colony
wine.
world.
has a
Right.
vineyard, and
I was the captain of the Federation. I was the front face captain of the flagship,
yeah,
ambassador extraordinaire, and I'm gonna walk away from all of it to go and fuck
in,
around on a farm somewhere
in France.
in
Yeah.
France and make terrible sour mead, as Worf calls it. Like really, really, like come
Yeah,
on.
yeah, yeah. I wish they had found a better way to handle Jake's character. Yeah, really make those. I mean, so we've talked about the autobiography of Benjamin Sisko.
Yes,
I don't know how far you're into it, but I mean, part of the plot is that grandfather Sisko, whose name I'm forgetting at the moment. What's Ben's father's name?
Joseph.
Joseph Sisko. It's communicated in the show, but definitely a lot more about in the book, where he wanted Ben to be his successor, because that would actually been how the family had been for several generations. The cooking uh Cisco's, they had this place in New Orleans, and so when
You're absolutely right. That would have been a great thing for him to do. That he didn't, necessarily give up on the family tradition. He just moved it out into the galaxy. He's now
right.
doing it in Bajor. He's bringing Earth Creole cooking
Well,
to Bajor.
and here's the fun thing you could have done: leave him on the station, make him the guy who's up against Quark. Quark has replicated food, but Dabo
He
girls and
opens,
Dabo
yeah,
tables.
he opens Cisco's. A franchise. He opens
Yes,
the first Cisco's franchise on
it's
the station. That
right.
would have been
And
great.
it would have served Earth food for the Federation, but also other types of food, but also Bajoran food. And that could have been Jake's whole thing, is like he's the guy learning to create all these dishes. And meanwhile, you have the tension of his dad runs the station. So does his dad favor his son when it comes to business
Hmm.
dealings? And Cork could complain all the time about, all this human food. I mean, he already does it with diet, or with the root beer. Make that a whole thing. I mean, I have to. I'll just say it. I will always say it. When the writers were making decisions about characters, it's hard to like make a decision and then turn from it. You make a decision, you got to stick with it sometimes. So I get it. They chose writing. It was this kind of a simple choice in the sense that it didn't require a lot of resources. Their budget didn't require Jake Sisko to, have a whole set to himself because he's a new cook. Um, that would have been a hard choice if they had gone that route. But in terms of making the character have a more interesting storyline than he ended up getting, give him a Bajoran wife, or at least girlfriend or something.
Yeah,
And
no,
yeah, I like that idea.
I agree. And I mean, and granted, this show was 30 years ago, and there was a certain formula to shows in the 90s and what they would can and can't do. And we are obviously the product of all the shows that also came out in those intervening 30 years, and things that we wish that people would do and see it, and all that kind of stuff. So it's like if they were to reshoot this show, which I don't know if they would ever do that for any Trek show. Like, we've seen reboots of, Baywatch and Knight Rider and MacGyver and so forth. I don't know if they would ever do a reboot of Star Trek, but if they did, I would hope that they would do some more of a deep dive into the interpersonal stuff. Because if anything, that's one of the things that um, Star Trek always lacked. And I know that part of that is because of Gene Roddenberry. He was very much into this, you know, there's no internal conflicts. He did not want there to be conflicts within the crews.
Hmm.
He wanted all of the conflict to be external, and that was a part of his message that we as a society, as a human society, we have moved past all of our bigotries and prejudices and so forth, and we don't
Right.
have those issues with each other. So that's our message as we move forward from the planet Earth, is that we are totally united, and we are moving out into the solar system and into the galaxy and exploring. That was a part of his message. So um, some have criticized it as not being realistic, that there would always be some kind of conflicts with people or whatever, and they have found ways to interject that in some of the other shows, Next Gen, Deep Space Nine, Voyager, so forth and so on. But I would like to see it done in a more, like we were just saying, like kind of these weird little like friendly rivalries. We're not backstabbing people per se, but it's a healthy competition,
Hmm.
that kind of thing.
Gotcha.
Um, Rounding out our season 3, we've got a couple of episodes that we can talk about here. We've got Shikar, where we finally meet Kira's old resistance cell
Is
and the
that season
leader.
3?
hmm Right
Really?
towards the end, that's where we meet him for the first
Oh,
time.
you're right. Wow.
Yes.
So yeah, Belial was gone, and that's right. Kira's like, finally, I'm gonna move
Well,
on.
yeah. Well, so even in that episode, she's still mourning Shikar, remember, or she's mourning Barial,
Belial.
and that's kind of the
Mhm.
point. Vedic Win or Kai Win at this point comes to Kira and is like, "I need you to go and speak with your old resistance leader to get back those reclamators that we sent out there. We need them so that we can begin commercial farming projects." And remember when Kai Win walks into her quarters, she sees the funeral urn, funeral pile for Barial. And she's like, "Oh, are you still mourning Vedic whomever who died?" And he was like, "No, this is for Barial." And she's like, "Barial died like a month ago. What's wrong with you? Like, let it go, you know?" Um, so yeah, there's that scene, and so then she goes and meets with Shakar, finds out that they had been promised these reclamators. They just got them. They've barely had a chance to use them, and already the guy is trying to take them back, and he's not going for it. And then they begin to resurrect their
Old
resistant
rebellion.
cell,
Yeah.
yeah, and rebel against her. Um, yeah,
I
so
just love the fact that, I mean, here in America we have the separation of church and state for good reason, and here's Kai Wynn. I mean, she is in the process of like, nope, I'm in the
I am
spiritual and
I
the
am church and
political
state,
leader
right? I
is.
am church and state.
I mean, it's no wonder that Gold Dukat ended up briefly with her. I mean, those
Oh
two
yeah,
were
they
made
are
for each
yeah.
other.
What's the two sides of the same coin? They were very much,
I mean,
the same person.
it was. I mean, that last episode was unfortunately a bit rough there at the last end. But those episodes, right when they're getting together and when he convinces her that he's been sent by the prophets and all that jazz. Ah, it was great, great
Well,
combo.
we'll get back to them for sure.
Yeah.
Another episode towards the end here that was pretty good is Facets. This is where Jadzia Dax has her Shantara. This is where she gets to interact with the past
Mhm.
hosts as they inhabit the bodies
Yep.
of the senior staff. And um, Cisco takes on Duran, the murderer, and Odo blends with Curzon, much to everybody's delight. And
By
we
the way,
find out
we
some very weird things. We did not really enjoy this one too much, if I remember correctly.
yeah, that
Um,
was a weird one.
Odo kind of creeped us out here.
Well, because
Uh,
Curzon was supposed to be this father figure to Dax, to Jadzia, but then it turns into a weird love thing, and it
yeah,
turns out that, well, I mean, let me put it this way: in the autobiography, of course, we get more about Curzon.
Curzon.
We learn about him, and like it talks about more how he is a womanizer. He has always got a new girl on his arm, and so for when you remember this episode in light of that, it's just like, man, the man just had a problem. Like,
Yeah,
he
and
just
it's
saw a
like
pretty girl, and yeah,
he was obsessed. I don't want to use the word obsessed. He became infatuated with Jadzia. She was, as he calls her, she was so pretty when she walked in to the initiate office and talked about wanting to be joined. And he was just so taken with her looks that he, you know, put her through hell, basically, and then still dismissed her. And he was like, and then he was feeling shameful for having dismissed her and crushed her dream. And then when she reapplied, he made sure that she got
right,
through,
yeah,
you know? So it's just like, and so she's talking about how she's lived with this shame, this guilt, and it was him all along that
right,
she's been feeling this
yeah,
shame and this guilt because of how he acted, and then the the ushering her through and so forth. So yeah, it was just, I don't know what they were really trying to do here. I've thought about this episode a few times, and in those, in particular, those scenes, like I don't think they played this well, and I just don't know what the message was they were trying to give us here. You know, is
Yeah.
this about kind of accepting yourself and your faults? Is it about, always doing the right thing? Is it about, not letting infatuation stop you from doing your job? Like I don't understand what they were trying to give us here. Some kind of weird, winsome, here's a old man lusting after a young woman and the inappropriate nature of that. Like I don't know. I never got it.
Well, I'll say this now as kind of a prequel, for a glimpse ahead to our review of the autobiography of Benjamin Sisko, which is a fine book. But because it's a book that is kind of having to take us on a whirlwind tour of Ben Sisko's life before the Deep Space Nine, it kind of lightly touches on certain aspects of what his life is like, and the Curzon part. Like I thought his relationship with Curzon, which was much closer than the autobiography makes it out. The autobiography makes it
Yeah.
out as Ben Sisko was basically assigned to Curzon Dask for an extended time period to where he got to know Curzon well and even accepted his advice on one certain occasion that the book relates. Um, and that's all fine and dandy, but it's not the close relationship that I had assumed that
Okay.
it was by the way the show made Curzon out to be when
Yeah,
it
the
comes to
show,
Jadzia.
I haven't gotten that far into this autobiography yet, but the show definitely makes it seem like they were just the best of friends and they
Yes.
had these kind of wild adventures
Yeah,
together.
if there was a
You
prequel
know,
show called The Wild Adventures of
of
Dax and
Curzon and Cisco,
Ben
right?
and Dax, it would have been like a 3-season kind of whirlwind tour of, it would have been
Of
a buddy
debauchery.
comedy.
Yeah, yeah,
Well,
exactly.
well,
Like
it would have
the
been it would have
wild
been debauchery from Curzon's element, but it would have been a buddy comedy in the sense of that Cisco is the straight man and Curzon is the charismatic
I'm trying to
comic.
think. I feel like there was a show that was like that. You had this older cop type guy who, he was not, yeah, he was just like unaffected by the rules anymore. He was just the coolest guy in the room all the time. He was untouchable because he had tenure, but he also had this
Men in
annoying
Black, I
knack for
feel, is the
being
best
right.
example, but
But I
it's
mean,
not
but
quite
without
right.
that, without that kind of that hard nosed kind of by the books guy, and then you have uh the young fresh from the academy. He's straight laced. He spit shines his shoes. His tie is always just right, and he's partnered up with this other dude, and they work well together. But there's that weird kind of, I'm sure that there are a couple of movies in the 80s and 90s that is just that, and I'm
And
kicking
I love
myself
this
for not
idea.
remembering.
This is our show. This is the show you and I have always wanted to make. This is finally it.
Yeah, but that's what it is, and it's like, and the straight laced young guy is not necessarily getting in the old guy's way, but
Right.
he's just kind of like in awe of him and how he's able to, you know, get through things. And when you think he's not paying attention, he comes up consistently with the breakthrough that solves the thing or brings attention to something else, or, if they get dropped in the middle of a terrible situation, he not only figures it out, but he makes friends and they're having drinks and singing bar songs. And he's like,
Yeah.
I thought you were, being murdered, and I come in here to find you carousing at the bar with, the cantina girls dancing on the side. Like
Right.
that was who Curzon, that how they kind of build him up to us to be.
Yes.
He can drop into any group, Klingon, Romulan, whomever, and he makes friends. He makes connections. That's why he was such a great leader. That's why he was such a great ambassador. He just had this air about him that made you want to listen to him and have fun with him, and that's what Cisco did. And even Cisco says, though, there are times though when Cisco when Curzon would kind of throw his weight around a little bit, you had to stand up to him. You
Yeah.
had to put him in his place a little bit, so again, they kind of build it in that there's still some areas of tension there. Yeah, that would have been a great show
Yeah.
to watch.
Well, the point I'm making though is that the book really makes it clear, and maybe it's not fair to talk about the book yet because we're talking about the show. But I'll just say this: the book makes it insinuates that Cisco was more reserved with
Yeah,
Curzon than the show indicates. Like when Jadzia in episode 1 shows up on the station and Cisco sidles up to her and starts calling her old man, it's like two old friends getting together. The book doesn't really have that. It really does sound more like Ben Cisco was like like I love this guy because he's charming and charismatic and I'm assigned to him, but it says that like there were times when he was chagrined, like like oh my gosh, I can't believe he just did that. Like there's more distance in the
yeah,
characters in the book,
okay,
which is fine. But I also thought when I thought of Curzon, I always thought of him like his flaw was his womanizing, but that was his flaw. Like it wasn't this thing he always was doing. It was just like this. He fell down again. He got off the wagon again with his infatuations with girls. Whereas in the book, it's like, no, he doesn't care. That's his thing. That is literally his thing. Is
yeah,
he doesn't care about like being romantic or committed. He just likes he's a guy who likes traveling around and wherever he goes, he finds a girl. That's his thing, and that makes Cisco, the family man, disappointed and again there's
yeah.
distance there.
Now,
We get on pre. That's all book stuff we'll get to. So
okay. Now, before we move on from facets, we still have to talk about Cisco's performance here as Duran,
yes,
and
yes.
only because I love the behind-the-scenes story here that apparently Avery Brooks really got into it and creeped a bunch of people out when he was playing murderous
Yeah.
Duran.
I've been
Um,
possessed. Wait a minute. It's not Ben Cisco that's possessed. It's Avery Brooks that's been
Right.
possessed.
So they said that he creeped a lot of people out when he was doing this, and so they were glad that his scenes were mainly between him and Terry, and away from them when they were doing it. So I just love that Avery Brooks just really commits to stuff, and I mean he's a scene stealer, man. We've talked about him enough throughout our episodes here that he just eats it up, man, when he's
Right,
on, and he did not disappoint as Duran either. He definitely comes across as creepy, as off.
right,
So yeah, shout out once again to the great Avery Brooks for giving us another stellar performance. Now,
right.
um, final episode of season 3 is called The
Well,
Adversary.
hold on. We can't talk
Yeah.
about that one just yet because we have to go back briefly and mention Improbable Cause and The Die is Cast. The episodes
Okay.
where the Obsidian Order and the Tal Shiar try and exterminate the founders and
Yes.
fail.
Cut off the head of the snake and fail spectacularly.
Yeah.
Odo is tortured by Garrick
Yep.
in the Dias cast.
By an Auburn Tain. And Auburn Tain says,
On an Oberyn's order,
yeah,
Garrick
if you're
tortures
gonna
him.
if you're gonna re-earn my loyalty, or if you're gonna prove your loyalty, you need to do this for me. Yeah, yeah.
Yes.
And Garrick's not happy about it, but he
He
starts
does it.
kind of doing it. I forget
Yeah.
how committed he is to it. How committed would you say
Well, I
Odo
mean,
gets, or
he
Garrick gets? I mean,
we see Odo is reduced into a pretty awful state. His
yeah.
skin's falling off of him. He looks like he's gonna die. He's shaking. His hair's falling out and all the rest of it. He looks pretty awful at one point. So, um, yeah, I would say Garrick was pretty committed. And then when he finally let Odo return to his liquid state, we see him kind of, he buries his head in his hands, almost like he's crying a little bit there,
Hmm.
from having had to torture Odo the way that he did. And yeah, those are both great episodes because, as it's pointed out here in the chat, that episode started when Garrick sabotaged his own shop and blew it up, and then this began the series of investigations into other known Obsidian Order operatives dying.
Well, that's
Um,
curious. So remind me. So Garrick blows up his own shop, but he does it because he knows that he's being hunted, so he does it to
Yeah.
to be like, "Oh, I'm dead. Don't come find me." Right? Is that how it works?
No, he does it to get Odo on the radar that something's going on.
Oh, that's what it is. Okay,
And so,
got
yeah, he needed Odo because Odo would have access to Federation
it.
knowledge and equipment
Resources.
and
Yeah.
so forth. And so he uses Odo to kind of get the ball rolling on this investigation and so forth, which he then reveals, yeah, several of his associates that he's reached out to are dead. No, it's Odo who tells him that. That's right, because Odo's like, during my investigation, I found out these people are dead, and Garrick's like, they're all dead.
Right.
He's like, yeah, and yeah, they put it all together then that something is going on and someone is cleaning up loose ends, and
Right.
that's what leads them to Enabra and Tane. So yeah, huh?
Okay. Yeah.
I love
Well,
those.
the yeah. And Auburn Tane, we don't know it yet, but we find out finally near the. I guess is it season 6 where it's. When does Garrick get officially told that yes, he is an Auburn Tane's son?
You know what? I don't think he's ever told it. He says it, and that's in the episode where
Well, he basically
he and
says, "Could just say it, just admit that
yeah,
I'm his
he just
son,
he
I'm your
says
son," or
admit, yeah, because it's in the episode where they discover that Tane is still alive,
oh, and they're
and
in the
they're in
prison
that prison
cell.
cell,
That's it.
right? And Tane had been working in the walls to get them freed, and then he
Right.
fell ill, and Garrick is comforting him, and he's like, "Before you die, just go ahead and admit it.
Right.
I'm your son." And
Right.
he's like,
Right.
"But you're not my son." He's like, "Yes, I am." Like, so no one tells Garrick. It's just he knew,
Right.
and he's been waiting all this time for Tane to admit it, and Tane doesn't really admit it.
Right.
He's
Right.
just like, I think he says something like, "You were always so clever,"
Well, but
which is kind of like a roundabout admitting.
the reason I bring it up though is because in these two episodes, this the die is cast and whatever the other one is, a probable cause. Um, when he finds an Auburn Tane, like he's wanting it to be admitted, but like let me put it this way, it's in this weird place in these episodes. We don't know anything for sure at this point.
Yeah,
Later, we
yeah.
find out what you just said, but yeah, which I guess is season 4 stuff. Now that I think about it, we're gonna have to move on to season 4 quickly if we don't.
Yeah, we're gonna, yeah. Well, and that was just gonna leave us to the final episode, the adversary, which we
Yes.
have to talk about because, this is where the Defiant is ordered to the Zenkethi border because the Zenkethi have been, there's been rumors of a coup and them, wanting to maybe start up old drama again. Then they find out that this is all a lie, an elaborate ruse put together by the founders to get the Defiant out there and probably caused a very, tension eruption that they were making up. And this is where Odo kills a founder, the first
Hmm.
violence against
Founder
founder
on
against
founder
founder.
violence. Yeah.
Yes, first time that's ever happened.
And it's more.
And
I do feel like that death. Remind me if I'm correct. That death is not so.
it's not black and white. It's not that
Yeah, that's
I
what I
don't feel
was.
like it was intentional. He did not try to murder him
Right.
intentionally. He was trying to stop him. And
Yes.
they were wrestling with each other, and he fell back onto the energized platform, which electrocuted him, and he died.
Yes.
So it was not that he had any intent to kill him. And Odo is quite stricken and
Yes.
remorseful when it happened.
Because Odo doesn't
But
carry a gun, if you remember. Odo
no,
doesn't feel the
yeah.
need to use deadly force, especially as a changeling. Yeah.
But but it is like, as we see in season 4, when Odo starts having issues and they take him to the Great Link, they decide that it's because it was violence at all. As
Yeah.
they said, no, basically their statement is no changeling has ever harmed another. And so even though they were wrestling around, it still caused the harm that ended the life. And that's when Odo was suffered to be reduced to a solid.
Right.
So great way to move us into season 4, by the way, because that's like, um, yeah, that's pretty much what happens uh, right off the bat there.
Yeah.
No, I'm sorry. It's not right away in season 4 that that happens because Odo maintains his shape-shifting abilities until much later. It is in season 4, but it's not in the first season or the first episode, I should say.
Right.
Um, First episode of season 4 is another two-parter,
Yeah.
Way of the Warrior, and
Yeah.
we get Worf.
Yeah, buddy.
Worf joins the show
Yep.
finally.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yes.
that's the one where the Klingons deciding that they want to take advantage of the Cardassian having been weakened by that two-parter where they, tried taking on the Dominion, and they basically were manipulated into thinking. Well, we come to believe this. We think they're manipulated into attacking the Cardassians in a foolish attempt to punish them for. Well, they think the Cardassians are being manipulated by the Dominion when the actual truth we're like, it's probably the other way around.
Yeah.
The Klingons are actually being manipulated to attack the Cardassians, and we actually need to all unite against the Dominion threat. But yeah, that's not what happens. So
Well, and remember the Dominion, well, the Klingon forces show up and they don't want to say what it is that they're going to do. And this
right,
is pissing off Cisco and the other officers, of course, which is what prompts them to bring in Worf. And Worf, having recently, he's been taking time off from Starfleet because, the Enterprise has just been destroyed and he's kind of lost his way a little bit. So he comes to the station offering to help at least temporarily and ends up finding a new home. He greets the new officers and he makes a big splash to be sure. And not only
right.
do we get Worf, we also get the introduction of another great character that we're all gonna end up loving a lot, General Martok, who
Yeah,
comes
buddy.
in and he's got the best opener ever. give give it to me or I'll take it from you. I love that so much. I don't know, just it's so simple and the no nonsense delivery. It was just great. So,
You can imagine that's a very Klingon like greeting at times in some
oh, I
ways. It's
mean,
like,
it was just perfect. Like no
yeah,
zero fat, as they say on that
yeah,
delivery. You knew what the man was about the moment that he started talking right there. So
right,
yeah,
yeah,
love that. Um, Season 4 also brings us The Visitor.
yes.
We're not supposed to be talking about like every single episode, but we're getting to a point in the show where a lot of the episodes in the season are
They're worth
great
talking
episodes.
about. Yeah.
Right. The Visitor is another one. Jake
Well, and
and
again, the reason I want to talk about it briefly is because that is the explanation given for why this exists in the universe. As you
it's,
again, yeah,
yes, that's correct.
Ben
Uh
says to Jake in the as the way for him giving the autobiography this autobiography is given to Jake basically, and he says, "Hey Jake, there was a time when I saw a vision of the future where you had lived your life after you thought I had died, but turns out I had died. I was traveling through time basically in a kind of a prequel to what actually happens to Cisco." And I was like, your life was kind of ruined because you kept trying to find me. You think I was still out there, and he kind of was. I don't want that to happen to you because of this. So I want you to know who I was, but I'm still alive, and that I'm okay. And here's my story. So that's how the autobiography opens because of this episode here, The Visitor.
yes.
So it's very important, and that episode's pretty interesting. It's
It's consistently rated as one of the best episodes of Deep Space Nine. It's
yeah,
a very moving, very personal episode. Um, I I don't think there's anybody who's ever watched an episode and not thought that it wasn't poignant and touching and beautifully done.
right,
Tony Todd, who plays the older Jake Sisko in that episode, gets all kinds of accolades.
yeah,
Or at least he did. Unfortunately, Tony Todd has passed away, but he got a lot of accolades in regards to um,
mm,
this portrayal here. He just it's beautifully done. The bond between father and son that we see portrayed in this episode, the importance of their relationship,
mhm,
the way that it frames Jake uh, into adulthood and his family and everything else, and the loss of Ben and the important. Yeah, wonderfully done, wonderfully done.
Right.
And yeah, I would almost say watch it again now.
Yeah.
You know,
Hmm.
um, yeah, you're definitely going to feel something when you watch that episode, and it's worth it. It's absolutely worth it.
Yeah,
So
you really your heart does break for this. We were just talking about how Jake Sisko, his writing career plot line didn't seem to quite work for the show, but in this episode it totally does. Like that is who he is. He had success. The opening scene and the whole plot is told through this character, this female, this young lady coming to talk to him about his work and life, and him relating to her what's going on. So yeah, it's a beautiful episode, and yeah, it's definitely a one off, but but yeah,
I don't think it
it's
could
really
have
good.
worked any other way. If they had dragged this out into a
Oh yeah,
two-parter, I
yeah,
just
yeah.
don't think that it would have had the same resonance. But I mean, it's beautifully done, and
Yeah.
knowing that that book, Anselm that he writes, it's something that when Ben is restored to us and everything else, we see that it's the book that Jake is actually working on.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
um, yeah, great little tie-ins like that, which just make it a wonderful episode. Um, Moving on, we again Hippocratic Oath, Indiscretion. Both of these are great episodes. You should go and watch them. Gul Dukat is
Hmm.
back for Indiscretion, of course, but just for the sake of time, we gotta move through and get to Rejoined because
Oh boy.
Rejoined is the hot button episode of Deep Space Nine, of course, and it's ours. When we did our
Yeah.
show, we did our podcast about it. We got some
We
interesting
have
feedback.
more people having commented and given us feedback on that episode than
Yeah,
anything else. If you see our 1-star reviews out there, it's usually
it
because
is
of how
usually
I responded to this
yes, it
episode.
is. And
Poor
and not
Perry
just your response, but also I guess apparently my lack of
response
taking
to
you
me.
to task for your
Yeah.
whatever. So of
Yeah.
course, if you know the show, you've watched the show, you know that Rejoined is the episode where Dax is reunited with a past spouse who has also been uh, implanted into a new host.
Right.
So in Troll Society, they're not supposed to reassociate with past loves at all. And here she is kind of flirting with disaster here. Lenara Khan is the name of the new host of the past love. And of course we have Jadzia Dax.
Right.
So as we know in Troll Society, they take on the names of the symbiont. So we have the Dax symbiont and the Khan symbiont.
Right.
And at one point, they had been a married couple, but then their respective partner or hosts had died. And then they had been put in other people. And now they were supposed to move on, but they were still caught up here.
Right.
So now this is also the closest that we get to a same sex couple relationship or anything like that. um, Even the showrunners, directors will agree that this is an episode they feel like they could have done more with in that regard. Um, Back when it aired, it got a lot of controversy, even back then. And it's still one of those that we that gets batted around. Is this a first for Trek or not? Is this a did we truly represent a homosexual relationship or not, like all of that kind of stuff. So,
Right.
um,
And if
yeah,
I may
good.
summarize kind of what my point was in commentary on the episode, yes, as a Christian, I believe that the idea of homosexuality, there is something that the Bible has to say on that. I'm not going to go any further. That's not the point I was trying to make ultimately. My ultimate point was that I think this episode failed even to present a. It was supposed to be an allegory for homosexual relationships. Two women kissing on screen for the first time, and what if you want to say Star Trek did it for the first time? This is the first time at least Star Trek did it. Um, my point was that the character of Jadzia, I think, is betrayed by the writers and by herself in the story itself by going through with this relationship. I think that the taboo in the Trill Society is that two symbionts who have already been paired via their hosts in terms of a romantic relationship, should not return to that romantic pairing in new hosts. In the Trill Society, the idea is that that stunts the growth and development that the symbionts provide to the Trill. The whole idea is that symbionts, by going from host to host, accumulate knowledge, etc. And so by returning to an old love, even though it's a new host, they're not doing that. That's a legitimate thing, I would say. That sounds legitimate as a reason for why not to do it. Which also brings up, for example, why Esri and Worf in season 7 is curious. Worf isn't a Trill, but again, should Esri just jump into Jadzia's shoes and bed, frankly, and relive her life? Well, no. According to the
Which was
Trill,
also why she shouldn't have returned to Deep Space Nine in the
in
first
the first
place.
place,
But
exactly.
yeah,
Yeah, her character,
um,
Dax, the character, should have been written off and someone else come on altogether. Dax as a character had been done. Let's move on. But anyway, for this episode here, Rejoined, that was my problem. Jadzia Dax does not say I'm tempted to be in love with this woman because of the whole Trill joined thing. She says screw the Trill Society rules on the subject, which are legitimate. I mean, the whole idea was that she had to go through this long, arduous process to even become joined. She says, "Screw it, let's run off together. Let me leave Deep Space Nine. Let you leave your. She's a scientist. This other woman is a scientist in her own right. Let's go leave everything and run off to be together." I think that doesn't do the character of Jadzia any good. That's not
and
the actions of a good character of a upstanding character. If you want to say that as an allegory for homosexuality, it's supposed to be let's embrace our homosexuality. Well, then, frankly, they should have just told a story about two same-sex people in love. I wouldn't have been a
and
fan of that episode, but I would have at least respected that in the sense of that's what they had chosen to do by treating the homosexual issue through the taboo of the joining and the rejoining and all that. They actually ignored. I would say ignored. They subverted and went around that controversy in our culture in order to present it as a taboo from a different culture. But I don't
yeah,
think they did that right either.
they
So
didn't.
yeah,
And I will agree with you, and I think I did agree with you then on that point because they had made such a big deal out of how important it is to be compatible with the joining and the process of selection of joining, and how Jadzia of all people was very much into those rules and going through that process.
right,
When Arjun came to the station because he was a potential Trill initiate, and she was the one who was, I think they called her uh, his docent, I think is the term they use for it in Trill Society, where she comes out and or Arjun has to come out and she gives an evaluation as to whether or not he's ready to take the next steps
oh,
in
that's right, yes. Mhm.
in the
The
joining.
process. Right.
And right. And so, she hammered him on the rules, and she gave him a little bit of, she's like, I'm not like, when I had to go through this, I'm not like so and so who put me through hell. I'm not going to necessarily do that to you, so forth and so on. But she did was a bit of a stickler on some things, some of the rules, and she talked about the history of it, and Curzon was a taskmaster about it, and her other hosts remember when they went through it and how their initiate process went and everything else. So she's very much aware of the ceremony and the history of this aspect of being joined
Right.
and how important that is. And she even says it's about the symbiont being able to have all of these different life experiences,
Right.
and you as a host have to be mature enough to carry on this incredible responsibility,
Right.
and to know that as a part of the society's rules of joining is that if you break this taboo, they exile
Yeah.
the
It's a
the
very
the
serious.
symbionts. Right.
Yeah.
So all of those lives, all of those experiences would then die whenever that host died.
Right.
And it's a huge loss. You would be sacrificing the combined histories of every other host that has come before you to run off and do this thing, and then they're forever forgotten
Right.
behind your decision. And that is how it's ultimately phrased here for why Lenara chooses not to go through with this.
Exactly.
She can't break that tradition. She can't break that line.
Yeah, and that's
And
my point too. Is like it should have been Jadzia as our main character who should have been the one to say I can't do it. As
yeah,
much as I am tempted, so but she's our
yeah,
main character, not this other character who we just met. Jadzia comes off as immature, unwilling to
ki-
be
yeah, kind of
upstanding,
flaky. Yeah.
flaky. Yeah. So that was ultimately my critique of the episode vis-a-vis anything
But
else.
all of that got drowned out, and our feedback was basically various accusations about homophobia. So it was like,
Yeah.
and I distinctly remember when we were talking about this, I said that we were going to be talking about it only in the context of the in universe rules as they had been presented to us. We were not analyzing this for is this an accurate representation of a same-sex couple or anything like that. We were talking about it from the sense of, does this plot work? And we were saying no, it doesn't, based upon information we'd already received about the characters in Troll Society. And because we said
Yes.
that it failed, we received this kind of blowback about not being, you about being homophobic, and me about not being an appropriate ally, which I don't
Right.
know what that means, but yeah, that was kind of the critique that was leveled against us on that.
Right.
So you know, I even now in us talking about it, I still don't feel like we, crossed either one of those lines. Again, we're just pointing out that based upon what had already been established as, Troll Society code,
Right.
this was a failure,
Right.
and Dax as our main character should have been more upstanding than what we received here.
Right. Well, I will point out, as Miles O'Brien Davis in the chat has brought up, uh, in the episode Meridian, which is season 3, Dax. That's true. We didn't mention it. We did a recap of season 3 just now, but yeah, there's a whole episode where she falls in love with a guy who's part of a society that phases in and out of existence every once in a while, and she's ready to go jump, run off with him. So maybe it's. I'll put it this way: in the episode Rejoined, Dax does, I guess, the same thing. So she's consistent in that sense, but that doesn't make me like
Well,
the character. I'll
but I
put it
would
that
say
way.
that Meridian gives us a little bit of a caveat because she is talking about running off with this dude and marrying him, but that wouldn't necessarily stop her from going back and placing the symbiont back in the symbiont pool before she
That's true.
dies.
She comes
She
back out after
because
60
right,
years, and
right, they
that's
they
been her
exist
experience.
as
Yeah,
right, they exist as non-corporeal energy for 60 years or whatever, and then they come back and they're corporeal again and they do whatever. So she could have conceivably lived with him in the non-corporeal state for a while and then come back and said, "Okay, new experience gained, done
yeah.
with this," and
Hey
moved
Ben, I'll
and
be back in 60 years. Tell
you
everyone
know,
I'll be back. Yeah, that could have worked. It would have been still kind of a strange, awkward, but yeah,
yeah, but it doesn't preclude her from still being a part of Trill Society the way that this decision definitely would have.
right.
So there's the little, asterisk besides Meridian
Yeah,
that we don't have with Rejoined. So
right.
yeah.
Well, let's, I guess, move on then.
Yeah.
Little Green Men, Quark, Nog,
Nice
and
nice
Odo,
fun episode, Little
yeah,
Green Man.
end up back in Roswell, New Mexico. It's in 1947 somehow. I love how whenever we get to Earth, time travel shenanigans
You
happen.
know, I really just think it's because they were just like, we want to do time travel, but we're bored. We don't want to do like, let's go back to medieval times, because that always was the thing, right?
Yeah,
In other shows, whenever they would do time travel, that's what it is. Like a kid in King Arthur's court or whatever it's called. It's played out, but let's do explanations for fun things in history, like the Roswell landing. And here's the Trek explanation for that. So, uh, what a fun way of like getting in some digs at humanity. Like we've got Quark and them here, and they're like horrified that humans smoke. And he's like, "What? They're smoking?" Because they're like, "What is that horrible smell?" And he's like, "Oh, it's tobacco. They roll it up and they burn it." And he's like, "Oh, and it's good for me." He's like, "Actually, no, it's horrible for them." He goes, "But they do it anyway." And he's like, "Yeah." And he goes, "Do they know?" "Yeah, they willingly put poison in their bodies." It's a whole lovely little exchange. And he's like, "Yeah." And he's like, "That's not even the worst part." And they find out about the weapons testing and everything else. He's like, "They irradiate their own planet? We got to get out of here. These people are crazy." So it's great the way that they just kind of
Mm,
like shine lights on the absurdity of things that we do. And I mean, we don't really think any. I mean, I guess now we don't. But yeah, they're just like, oh my god, like
yeah,
they're right.
yeah,
So and then of course Odo is there to really save the day to get
yep,
Quark to listen to his better angels, I guess, and
right.
do the right thing. What else was in that episode? I feel like we're forgetting. Oh yeah, we have the brief reminder of past tense because they're the reason that they're even on Earth is they're going to Earth to take Nog to Starfleet Academy. And on his way
Correct.
there, Nog is studying and he's reviewing Earth history and he's reading about Gabriel Bell and the Bell riots. And there's a picture and it's Cisco. And he's like, "Doesn't this guy look like Captain Cisco?" And Quark's like, "Ah, humans, they all look alike," and just keeps moving. So
Yeah.
and then of course we move into Homefront.
Well,
This
the
is where
Sword
we're
of Kalis is the next episode.
well, I know, but like I said, we weren't supposed to be talking about every single episode.
I was just gonna
I'm
say it's
trying to
when
get us
Dax and Worf, are on
Dax,
the mission
Worf, and
together.
Core. Yes,
Yeah. Okay. All right. We can
Core
move on.
comes
We can
in.
move on. Homefront.
Well,
Okay.
well, you've already brought it up. Now we got to talk about it a little bit.
Well, I
they
just
go to find the sword of Kalis,
right.
and Worf gets called out once again for his lack of Klingonness because one of the young boy Duras is hot on their heels, and Kor finds out that Worf had an opportunity to kill young boy Duras and doesn't take it. And he's like, "See, if you had done the Klingon thing and killed the boy, we wouldn't be in the situation right now
Yeah.
that we're in." And Worf's like, "Yeah, but if you weren't a drunken idiot, we wouldn't be in this situation either." So nice little critique between these two characters. But
Hmm.
again, Homefront, I feel like, is the important part
True.
here in this first part of
Yes.
um, season 4.
Correct. Yes.
It's the two-parter that wasn't, you know, Homefront and then Paradise Lost, because Homefront is where Earth is attacked seemingly, and Cisco and company go back to Earth to ferret out what's going on, and we
Hmm.
discover that it's really a corrupt admiral that's trying to seize power
Right.
and consolidate his power base.
Which
And
that admiral was Cisco's former captain at one point.
yes,
Uh,
and he had kind of been grooming Cisco to a certain degree to be a part of his cadre of leaders here, but Cisco has rebuffed him, and he's like, "Yeah, we're not going to play this game, and you're running a conspiracy with the Federation and with Starfleet, and I'm going to stop you." And Admiral
right.
Layton is like, "Yeah, no, we can't have that," and convinces a bunch of people that Cisco's actually a changeling and has him arrested and everything else. But of course, Odo is there who helps out. And this is also where we find out about Red Squad for the first time.
Mm,
The
they're gonna come back.
the uppity hotshot upstart officers or cadets
Hmm.
who Leighton is using to carry out all of his uh, clandestine
Yep.
operations.
Yep.
Well, honestly, we're gonna have to stop here.
Okay. Yeah. Fair enough.
It's unfortunately we can't keep going.
It's an hour 30 in. Yeah.
Yeah, and there's so much to still talk about in season 4.
Right.
But we can close it out with like I love the way that they do these episodes. Like, and this is I feel like the point where, as many of the showrunners have said, Deep Space Nine kind of became like the middle child, and Paramount and CBS, so if they stopped paying attention to what they were doing here, and I really feel like season 4 is where we see that.
Right.
They, you know, no one's really watching what this show is about. They're kind of just making sure things are still running smoothly enough to make money. And they're giving us some great storylines and building something here that before too long, it's going to be like runaway train. Can't stop it. So, um, yeah, these two episodes, Paradise Lost, really kind of highlight that as well. And
Right.
we get a great performance from not Jake, I'm sorry, but Joseph Cisco when he
Yes.
tells
Oh,
Ben,
is this
yeah,
where
he
he's
tells,
introduced? The character
yeah,
is
actually,
introduced?
this is the first time that we see Joseph Cisco. Yes, it is.
Right.
And he does not want to be blood screened. And they're like, all the
That's
Federation
right.
top families are doing it. And he's like, I'm not going to do it.
Right.
And then he gets all twisted up because Ben he cuts himself in the restaurant, and Ben is so worked up that he's looking at the blood instead of taking care of his father. And Joseph's like, they've got you so wound up and twisted around, you're seeing enemies and shapeshifters everywhere you go.
Yeah.
And he calls him out. He's like, there's not a test that a smart man can't figure out a way around,
Yeah.
you know?
And to remind me, there's a later episode. It's the episode where Bashir is no, what is it? The changeling that they chase at one point. Dr. Bashir is at one point. Isn't Dr. Bashir at one point the changeling? I don't know.
Yes.
There's some episode. I think it's going to be maybe next season. I forget which one it is, but there's a whole thing about trying to find. Or was that the one where the ambassador died at the end of season
It's
3?
that one. It's the
That's
ambassador
what it
one.
was. Okay,
Yeah,
that's what it was.
the ambassador because the Defiant gets sabotaged.
Right.
And so they go to do blood screenings
So they
and
pull the thing, and
yeah.
they say it's the blood that you could use to tell. Yeah.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah.
Because
And that's
that's
how they
also in the
know to
season
do it in
opener.
these episodes. Yeah.
And that's how they know to do it in the season opener because when Martok comes on the station, he wants to meet with Kira and Cisco. And before the meeting starts, he makes them cut their hands and let the blood drip on the table.
Right.
And that's in the season 4 opener.
Right.
So, yeah.
And we later find out that he was a changeling all along.
Hmm.
Actually, that's a good question. Was he a changeling all during season 4?
Who?
And it's Kayla, Martok. Martok. Was
So,
Martok?
so that's the thing. Like, we d- we don't know when he becomes a uh, founder. Did we ever meet the real Martok and then he disappeared on us and we get him back?
Right.
Or was he always whatever? I like to think that we met the real Martok and then he gets captured at some point. And I
Okay.
believe he even says it in the episode when we find the real Martok, he says that he went to sleep one night and when he woke up, he was wherever.
Okay. So according to AI, quick search on Google, he was replaced during a hunting trip to the planet
Yeah,
Quomo.
that's right. That's what he says. That's right. He was hunting, and it turns out something else was hunting him.
Right.
And when he went to make his kill, they captured him. Yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's a fun little storyline in the sense that um, that's what changelings are supposed to do. They're supposed to impersonate people. The Dr. Bashir one is another good one. We don't realize he's been replaced until a bit after the suits have been changed. So he's like the real one's wearing the old suit. Great
Hmm.
little callback in that little moment. Yeah, we'll have to stop talking, otherwise we can keep going. But yeah,
Yeah.
season we're still on season 4, so I guess we're halfway through the whole show at this point. Is that an accurate statement?
What?
Basically, the
Yeah, we've reached the halfway point.
Homefront and Paradise Lost are about halfway through. So
Yeah. Okay.
yeah,
We did a good job. And we've got some great episodes coming up and especially some other things as well in the pipeline. If you have not read the autobiography, please go pick it up so that you can be ready to
yeah,
discuss this with us. It's coming. We wanted to do this part first to give both of us time really to get through the book, mainly me, because I've just been slow on reading things. This
Take
took me
your
time
time. Take your
to get
time.
it done. But and as I've said, we are going to be moving into Voyager. Um, I was talking with an old friend of mine recently, and I told them that we were making the switch to Voyager, and the reaction I got was hilarious. They're just like, "Ew, why? Voyager sucks." I was like, "You hold that thought. We're gonna we're gonna have to come back to that."
Yeah.
So
It's
there's
funny. I'll
Voyager
just
hate out there.
Yeah, I'll just say this. Now that it's been a couple years since I watched TNG, and because there are enough times when I see clips from TNG come up on my YouTube feed, there's a part of me that wants to like recap like TNG a bit, like go back and not necessarily. We don't have to do the show here.
Yeah,
I'm just saying like me go rewatch those episodes, especially if we're watching Voyager. The idea of being able to compare them against each other a little bit better because I'll have maybe a little bit in my mind.
yeah.
Because if we're doing Voyager, yeah, going back and kind of comparing it against TNG a bit will be fun. So
Yeah,
maybe I'll do some of
that
that.
might actually help you out a little bit too, because there is the whole thing about how Voyager was supposed to be a return to the TNG format. So, you can kind of help yourself out to see how well you feel like it stacks up to that. Um, he says, yeah, Voyager is great and terrible, but on balance, I love it. I will agree. I do remember when Voyager first premiered and how excited I was for it. I remember not being so thrilled with the first few episodes of the show. And I remember when I did finally kind of fall in love with it a little bit, So we'll get to talk about that when we get there. But I will still tell you to this day, after having watched all of them multiple times, Deep Space Nine is my heart. It brings me home. It's it for me. So I think that it had the best writing. I think it had the best acting. I love Next Generation. Don't get me wrong. There's always some great things that you can find in that one, but man, uh, Deep Space Nine is just more personal, in
Yeah.
my opinion. So but that will do it for us on this episode of our show, Fire Caves. No new Trek updates at this time. Go to Paramount Plus and watch stuff. Oh, I will say that they have been talking about a restructuring of how they offer programs on Paramount Plus. So I don't know if that means they're going to be taking stuff off or what, but typically whenever there's a shuffling around of programs, things do tend to get lost. And considering that most Trek is about 30 years old, I wouldn't be surprised at all if they took a couple of, especially the older ones like the original series, for example, they took them off. So if you want to watch them, now is the time. If you want to just have them, I saw on Amazon recently a lot of these you can buy the complete seasons for like less than $60 right now. I don't know if that's just a low price because the holidays are around the corner and they're doing that or what. But if you just want to buy them and own them and not have to worry about what streaming platform you need to be on to watch them, there's my little plug for Amazon. Go order them from there and then be done with it. I was actually considering it because I don't want to lose Deep Space Nine and not be able to watch it because they take it off. So there you go.
Boom.
Well, guys, until next week, take care of yourselves.
Thanks, guys.